good to be back with you guys. Today is Wednesday, and we're going to be hopping right back into our series going through Different with Jonathan Evans. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this series. It's been so good to learn from Jonathan. I love getting to hear his teaching and hear his explanation of the gospel because, man, he rocks my world every time that he talks, and he's so powerful with his words. But like I said, this is our last week in this series, and we're going to be talking about having a different lifestyle. And just like how we start off every week's video, we get to hear a testimony from someone, and this week we get to meet Tommy. And right off the bat, Tommy talks to us about his journey through playing baseball. And Tommy was basically like the guy when it came to baseball. And he knew that he had the talent and the skills to make it in the next level. He gave everything that he had to the sport. He ate it, he drank it up, and he started to take that process to go to the next level as seriously as he needed to. But it was early on in the season when it all got flipped upside down, however. And when he was up to bat, he felt this immense pain in his back. And it turns out that he had a stress fracture in his back that caused him to have to wear a brace for about 6 months, and it totally shut down his season. And so this was obviously a huge blow for him. But what made it harder was that baseball was where he found his identity. And when that all got stripped away from him, he felt like he didn't really know who he was. But this is actually where God intervened, and he started to place guys in his life to fill that gap for Tommy. He started to get really close to his youth pastor, and his youth pastor set him up with opportunities to see that he can place his identity in Jesus and not in baseball. And Tommy was so inspired by this that he actually started to volunteer to lead a school Bible study with other student athletes and point them to Christ as well. And Jonathan starts off his teaching by talking about how he can relate a lot to Tommy's story, because when he was playing football and he was trying to continue on in his pro career in the NFL, he tore his Achilles tendon. And when you dedicate everything in your life to something like that, whether it's a sport or music or dance, and then that all gets ripped away from you, you really feel empty inside. You don't know what to do with your life. But he says that this is when you need to start being rich towards God, and how that reminds him of a parable in Luke chapter 12. And in this parable, Jesus is explaining about how to be rich towards God and kingdom principles. And as Jesus is explaining these things to the disciples, how things are in the dark that they will come to light, a young man in the crowd shouts to Jesus and he says, "Hey Jesus, tell my brother to share his inheritance with me." And Jesus tells him, "Why would you even ask me that question while I'm trying to share these kingdom principles?" This guy obviously didn't really know who he was talking to, because Jesus is focused on the kingdom first, because that's his job description. That's why he's here. 1 Timothy 2:5 says that Jesus is the mediator between God and man. Jesus is not the mediator between God and greed. So if you only pray to God for selfish reasons like, I want more of this, or I want more money, or I want friends, or I want a boyfriend or a girlfriend, I want to be the best at my craft, whether it's a sport or music or dance or whatever it might be. It's not like God ignores those, but he wants to know how you are going to use those things to bless his kingdom. And so we see in the book of Luke, we're going to be in chapter 12, verses 16 through 21. It says this, "And he told them a parable saying, the land of a rich man produced plentifully, and he thought to himself, what shall I do, for I have nowhere to store my crops? And he said, I will do this, I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. But God said to him, fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things that you have prepared, whose will they be? So this is the one who lays up his treasure for himself and is not rich toward God." And so Jesus tells us this parable so that we know where to make our investment on this earth and where it really should be directed. This investment that this man made was not going to last. It's kind of like a businessman putting all of his money into a company that he knew beforehand was going to fail. No one's going to do that because we don't want to fail. Now that doesn't mean that we don't like certain things in this world or that certain aspects of this world, but why would we put everything that we are, everything that we have into this world, all of our beings, when we know that this world is going to fail in the end? We aren't going to be here forever, but we do know we're going to be in heaven forever. And so Jesus is saying, don't just be blessed here. You don't want to be blessed here. You want to be blessed where we're going to be too, whenever this all ends. And so it's kind of like when you lose your phone, right? I know for me personally, if I lose my phone, I stop everything that I am doing just to find it, because my whole world revolves around my phone. I send emails, I send text messages, I'm on social media. Everything that I do is centered around that, because that's how I stay in touch with my family, or with Elena, or with you guys. I mean, these days, I'm even doing most of my work on my phone. I mean, at the end of the day, I use my phone for a lot of good things, but I'm also kind of addicted to it. And I know that all of you agree with me, because don't lie, I constantly see you all on your phones during youth group. I mean, heck, if you're watching me talk right now on your computer or on another device other than your phone, I'm sure you've already at least checked your phone twice, or you're on it right now. I know you guys. But what happens when we lose touch with God? Let's go to another route. Do you lose your mind if you lose touch with God? Or are you more worried about losing your phone over losing touch with God? Maybe you're investing more in this world than you're investing in God. So what Jesus says at the end of the parable is that you want to be rich in God, not just rich in this world. And rich isn't a bad thing. But if that's the only thing that you pour your life into, then you're missing out on the life that God has called you to. And so next up, we meet Lillian. And Lillian's story kind of points back to what we talked about last fall when we did our 3-circle study with the church. She talked about how growing up, she thought that her mom and dad were the main Christian members or the main church members in the house, and that she didn't necessarily take part in the different things the church did, because that was what the adult's job was. It's kind of like tithing and serving. She didn't think that she needed to do that. And so when her church had an evangelism training, she thought that wasn't meant for her, because that was up to an adult or a minister to go in and reach other people. But her parents had her go, and the one thing that they did is that they would actually go door to door and talk to neighbors and share their testimonies and pray for them. And Lillian actually had this opportunity to pray for a younger guy who was so broken down by their coming that it drove him to tears. He was so reached that people would come and want to pray for him and want to be with him and show him the Lord. And so finally, Lillian realized that this is her calling in life, to go and share that gospel. And she is the one that has to go and do that. And she doesn't have to wait to do it either. Now is the time. She realized she doesn't have to wait. And Lillian's testimony is so awesome because it's where she found her own faith, right? You at your own age, you don't have to wait to be your parents' age to live your faith. You don't have to wait until you graduate high school to live your faith, because living your faith now is how you have a different lifestyle. It's how you attract people to what you're doing, because they're going to see you and see that you're different, and you're doing it differently than the rest of the culture. And God is calling you to live a lifestyle that represents Him and the life that He has planned for you. And that's what Jesus is telling us in this parable in Luke chapter 12. This rich man had all these crops, and he had a great harvest, but his barns were too small to hold all of his crops. So he just decided to build a bigger one so that way he could store all the crops in the barns. He just does this so that way he can sit back and relax, because he has all of these crops. He's now so wealthy, he doesn't have to do anything. But what he didn't take account for is that this life doesn't last forever. And that night, God came knocking at his door saying, "Your soul is required of you tonight. Now what are you going to do with all of this stuff that you stored up?" Did you know that you could be rich and famous on this earth and still be a fool in the eyes of the kingdom because you didn't invest in the right places? You don't want to live this life and make a bad investment in the life to come. This rich man didn't realize this life wasn't forever, so he didn't make an investment in the life that was still coming for him. He only made an investment in where he currently was. And so it's time to have a different lifestyle and live differently than the rest of culture. It's time that we take what we have left here and we can invest in what He has coming for us. It's time to live a different lifestyle right now. Don't focus on what the world is giving you. It's nice to have nice things, and it's nice to be in a good situation, but guys, what God has planned for you is so much more than you can ever have here. I hope you've really enjoyed this series going through different. I know I have. I can't wait for what we have next. And guys, I can't wait for us to be back together soon. I hope you all are doing well, and I'll see you soon.